seconds to a minute, just so that the stream doesn't get cut off. But the reason why you're gonna see the same thing on screen is because, well, these are the guidelines we're using when I'm making a tier list. And for this specific stream, we're looking at the difficulty of old gods and whatnot. If you want me to do something else, then I don't mind setting that up. But for this stream, for the purposes of the stream, what's not on screen is that we're rating them based on difficulty, so should probably name the tier list something different to make up for it as I set up the tier list really quickly, because I had to grab these assets that I've screen capped just so I can at least we can see something on screen. But same thing, I'm not going to explain them. If you want an explanation of why some of these guidelines exist, please see the previous stream before this one that was all about the characters, because otherwise I'm just going to be talking about old gods now. I'll switch it a bit, just making sure, because the stream, when I look at the VOD for the last stream, it was, or the last tier list stream, it was not, it cut into the guidelines, which is why, again, I'm giving myself 30 seconds to a minute before we start. But yeah, let's just get this started now. Not really much else to go on, and I was, funny enough, I was thinking before the stream started, wow, this is going to be faster, so maybe it's better I'm starting late. No, it's not, because I realized there are 9 old gods and 12 to 13 backstories. Well, we can remove one of them because they're just default, but as we switch over here, yeah, we're gonna go. So, I don't know how I actually want to make this tier list. I guess, Prey, RNG, and it's like, kind of hard. I'm not gonna use letters because, well, hey, but this is based on difficulty, so hey. Pray to RNG, pray more to RNG. Even though it's supposed to be objective, so really, yeah, S. Kinda hard. It's like, oh, yeah, it's good enough. And then we go like, okay, oh, definitely workable. And then, lol. So, I don't know, I mean, if it's not really, this isn't really a joke, but still. Yeah, so we'll give you, so for future Jordan, we're going to timestamp here and say, hey, this is just my 1 minute review. So 1 minute review, Ath, Katak, good enough. Azal, Prayed RNG, Goizo, definitely workable. Herald, yeah, workable, actually funny enough still. Thotu, same thing with over here, good enough. Cthulhu, yeah, kind of. You got that, kind of, and then Zektas up here. So this is, if you want a 1 minute digest of what's going on here, yeah, this is what's gonna be. So, again, if anyone has better ideas, at least who's watching the stream now, then please let me know of what you want each tier to be. Otherwise, it's kind of, these descriptions aren't supposed to be jokes, but essentially from top to bottom, it's most difficult to least difficult. And then after about 30 seconds or so, we'll get into basically the explanations why. And then we have backstories as well. I have it on a separate page, or tab in this case. But yeah, let me see if I can't just make this look a little better. So yeah, hey there, by the way. Also, during the stream, if you're watching this as the stream starts, you shouldn't see any ads, but if you watch this after the stream starts, then you might actually see ads. So that's the only other asterisk to this point. But for old gods, yeah, that. I guess I should move on to backstories really quickly and just do a 1 minute digest of those as well. So we'll actually do that really quickly here. So 1 minute digest of the backstories really quickly here. Are counting exclusive events? Yes, we are. We're counting exclusive, and that's something I was going to talk about with each old god, but as we get into backstories here, yeah, let's just do this really quickly. So I'm trying to be as objective as possible. I could make a subjective tier list, but for the moment, let's just start off here. Actually, we'll still put that in C, because sometimes the cultists can be bad. Seventh Curse, bed down here in D, ill-fated. Really S for people with average luck, in my opinion, but we'll see. And these aren't, like, left to right is supposed to be priority, but here we're just gonna kind of group them together. So what I mean by that is, I'm not saying any backstories on the left are harder than the ones on the right in the same row. Curious Birthmark, actually Scars goes down here. Eldritch Parasite, yeah, that goes up here. Curious Birthmark, Exquisite Taste, actually B. Fatalist B, if you know how to do, we're assuming you know how to do it, so no human error like the guidelines said, and the commoners up here. So again, 1 minute review, or 1 minute, if I had to do this off the top of my head, this is kind of where I put the backstories. In no particular order yet, but then when I get into the backstories, which will happen after Old Gods, I will more properly tier them up. But if you had to ask me immediately, yeah, that's that. That might not sound important, but just in case anyone's going in and coming into the stream or coming into this as a VOD and being like, oh, Jordan, what's happening? Then yeah, let me do that. I think I might actually have to zoom in. It's not like we have that many Gold Gods. Okay, that doesn't look good. Actually, no, what I can do is this. So let me do that. And let me switch things around really quickly, because otherwise I can't see. But if I do this, we should be a bit better, just so that we don't have anything unnecessary on stream. Yeah, on screen, sorry. So, yeah, without further ado, let's actually rate these properly, and then so we'll go from top left to bottom right, so, yeah, and then I will do some restructuring as intended. Questioning Herald and Yagathag. The reason why I put those the way they are is that, yes, while Herald, some of these placements are due to my observations of other players and how they ultimately end up treating certain Old Gods effects. So Herald, in my subjective opinion, is at least kind of hard, but I put definitely workable because town effects to a lot of players, I feel, doesn't affect them as much as it does some other players. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't have any effect, because losing your bath and then also getting your rest mystery 1 is pretty bad, but that's still definitely workable for a lot of players, as opposed to me or you or anyone else who, you know, that doesn't end up as well because we roll badly in events or something like that. So anyway, let's start with Azal. Azal. So Azal should go without really saying as much, but for those who don't know, Azal's effect is that it introduces a new rule every mystery, and this essentially gets you more Doom. You are supposed to avoid effects of the rule, like if you have any injuries, Doom increases by 1 per injury or something like that. There's a ratio, but let's move on with this. There's a rule that's every 10 experience you take 1 Doom, rounding. I think it rounds up against you. There's another one where every item that's left in your inventory and not in storage or equipped adds 2 Doom, adds 2 more Doom at the end of the mystery, so on and so forth. And some of these effects, they're not the most difficult to work around, but there are definitely a few rules where it's like that Doom is going to add up over time. And on an Azal, a Knight Errant run, that Doom quickly adds up. On a Azal, commoner run, you're just eating damage left and right. You don't have to worry about the experience rule, but not having any experience at all just does as bad. So I don't know if it's harder than Zictast yet, because I need to at least think about that right here, and I could be wrong. All this is pretty much happening in the moment, but also at the same time I've had a good number of World of War runs under my belt. Human Error, the Old God, yeah. So Human Error, the Old God, because yeah, that's the flip side of that, right? On the flip side of that, I guess I will put it under Zictast, because there are a lot of rules for Azal are Human Error, and the ones that you have less control over are usually not going to increase their Doom as much, like Curse and Injuries. But things like Experience, if you're stuck with like Festival, Vigil, and Scissors left in your run, then you're just sitting there going, well, I can't get rid of any experience, as opposed to the Fund rule, where you want to keep 1 fund or throw all your funds away by the end of the mystery. Depends on what you like. I should explain that, actually. So for the Fund rule, you usually leave 1. The reason why you add 1 fund is that at the end of the run, sure, you take 2 Doom, but if you proc out of funds, you're going to lose 3 stamina, 3 reason, or 5% Doom. I think it's 5% Doom, but let's assume it's even 4% Doom. That's still obviously more than the 2 Doom you would have gotten. Or unless you have a trickier plan in between, is to toss all your funds away by clicking the Misery Parasite status effect, throwing all your funds away, and then afterwards, assuming you have an item to sell, you sell the item, then you're back to 1 fund, but you skipped getting any Doom increases. The experience rule, theoretically, you're supposed to use a police station, but like I said, if you have Vigil and Festival left, you can't really do anything about that. So whatever experience you have, you get 6 Doom, and then you get like 4 Doom, and it's like pain. Not letting you throw away experience seems like an oversight with Azal. Yeah, but I guess because a lot of time, I don't know if Azal was included in this, but a lot of times, especially when something's released, Panstas asks the community, if it's not so bad, And it's not the worst, but it's certainly the hardest of, in my opinion, of the things that you can't control, along with, right under Zectast, obviously. But we'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, for Azal, usually the community has a good sway of things, especially if it's little number changes here and there. That's a lot easier to do and has less bugs involved. What I mean by that is each injury can instead give you 0.75% doom. Each point of experience, each 10 experience could be instead 0.75 or 0.5 doom, something like that. The game does calculate decimal form. It's just that the way that it's returned to you, or the way that it's displayed to the player, is through whole numbers. So lore-wise, which one do I like the most? Lore-wise, gotta say Katak, funny enough. Katak and then Yagatak. I feel like there's one that I always kind of, pet, basically, but I can't remember. But if it's not Katak, it's Yagatak, just really quickly. But anyway, let's move into Zectast really quickly. I guess we can do that as a joke. Depends on how much time I have left, because I have to do other stuff. But yeah, let's move on to Zectast. So Zectast, same reasons for Azal. Hey, as you'll notice, a lot of things about this tier list are the difficulty of gods being higher. Usually revolves around things outside of the player's control, and Zectast is one of these, in that the primary factor, although it's not the biggest mechanic of Zectast, it is a big mechanic, is that Zectast has events that increase your stats by 3. They cost usually something like stamina or reason, but they increase the stat by 3 because Zectast's main mechanic is to decrease your stats by 1 every 21% doom, up to 84% doom before you die at 100%. Theoretically speaking, at 105, maybe a 126, maybe does it? I don't know if it procs more. If it does, I forgot. I know there's a way to check, but if not, just re-rolling at a shop over and over again, or in your level up over and over again. But essentially, that's the effect. So overall, your stats are going to decrease by 4 over the course of a run. Also, retroactively speaking, I'm pretty sure that your stats do not increase at negative 21% doom. But you get the point. If your character does not have at least 5 in every stat at the start of the run, you need to do something or complete the run faster before your stats hit 0. It's not an immediate game over, but for those who don't know, when a stat hits 0, your doom shoots up to 100%. It doesn't increase by 100%. I think it just sets it to 100%, but I can't remember. Either way, you're meant to game over. So that's Zectast's main mechanic, and the reason why it's primordial, or it's at least it's definitely hard, is that it depends on the character. Of course, it depends on the character you're picking, but most characters, especially base characters, they are missing 2 or 3 stats. They need an increase of 2 or 3 stat points overall to avoid dying at 84% doom. And for a lot of base characters, even ones that you don't unlock, even some of the ones that you do unlock, they need to increase 1 or 2 of their stats to avoid dying at 84%, and they usually don't finish a run in under 84%. You can, it is certainly possible with all characters, but it's less likely, especially if your character is already objectively harder to play on Harbinger difficulty than not. And this is quick play rules too, so you could have all perks, you could have character-specific perks, you could be on random timeline, or you're on random timeline, so on and so forth. Most likely to confuse new players of war, yeah. So Zectast, there are, and that doesn't help with the bugs that are currently inherent in the game, but once you understand them, then yeah. But of course, for a lot of players who are one-offing, Zectast and Azal are kind of hard to wrap their heads around. I forgot which achievements unlock them again. If anyone wants to remind me, that would be great, because then, I mean, it's not like, because you can unlock any achievement in any order, right? So you could just randomly unlock Zectast immediately, or you could unlock, it could take you like 2-3 hours to unlock both of them, if you're focusing on achievements anyway, for the latter case. But Zectast as a whole, there are characters who do quite well on Zectast, but the general, like, if we're not looking at character by character, because we are trying to just generalize everything, but we are looking at every character, then yes, overall, a character is usually going to have a worse time. Another smaller negative, but no less significant, is the fact that when your stats decrease, obviously it gets harder to do stat checks, but it also gets harder to do your attacks while you're in battle, because you get slower, especially if it relates to strength. Mostly strength, but if you care about dodge, dexterity as well. But then you also have your own item attacks, or your item speed scaling, so that. As opposed to Azal, where it's just like, oh yeah, rules, but human error controls a lot of mistakes here, as opposed to Zictast, where you have less control because your stats will decrease after 21%. There aren't a lot of runs on a quick play vacuum of runs where you are getting a handful of mysteries. You can do 1 or 2 mysteries and still be under, like, definitely under 42%, but 21%, that initial stat decrease for characters like Yumiko, Ayaka, Toshiaki, can be very painful. But Ayaka and Toshiaki have things to avoid that, whereas Yumiko just dies. So, anywho. Yeah, but that's Zectast. There are things I'm probably forgetting here and there, but I usually want to outline the things that are most relevant in terms to their placement to the tier list, but just in general, just to kind of explain why something might be difficult or not. Again, Zectast does have events that increase their stats, but they're pretty much RNG. You can go into a run with Zectast and run into none of those events, or you can run into 4 out of 5, because there are 5 stats that Zectast can increase. So shrug, but anywho. Just, and also off of the near negligible, but still negative fact that the cost for, like, increasing your strength and dexterity might be 2 stamina, and then you just die. But, again, small price to pay for Zectast stats. But let's move on to Cthulhu. Cthulhu, I think, I want to say that because Cthulhu is also pretty much a near negative. I don't remember what the positives are, aside from events that can, 1, take you to Katana Land, which, sure, but 2, experience events that can get you experience, or curses in the case of Ayaka. Very small positives, but that's why, I mean, Cthulhu I don't think should be in Predator RNG Land, because a lot of things are still controllable. You know that Reason will also increase Doom at a ratio. I forgot what it exactly was. It's not 2 to 1, obviously. If it was, I think it's like 3 to 1, so 3 Reason per 1 Doom-ish. But either way, you know that losing Reason also increases Doom. So either you have a way to decrease Doom, or you have a way to deal with the Reason loss. I just realized my volume was a bit lower than intended, but yeah, so like, for example, when you walk into an event and you know that avoiding the dog decreases Reason, then you want to just gamble on the stat check there. I'm talking about a very specific event. For those who don't know, but the concept I'm trying to say is that you can, if you know your events, then yes, you can avoid taking Reason loss. Now, you can't keep taking stamina loss or Doom increases, and sometimes the Doom increase is worse than Reason plus the Doom, but again, this is kind of definitely a test of your knowledge of World of Horror. So yeah. Zictast can't increase knowledge. No, I think Zictast can increase knowledge, yeah. And if not, let me know. I feel 95% sure of that. Decrease Doom every mystery with It's All a Dream. Oh yeah, you do? I don't feel it, but I guess that's because on Harbinger, I expect for my Doom to not decrease, but if it is a decrease, you're still, overall, Doom is still increasing. It just makes it less difficult, obviously, because without any Doom decreases with It's All a Dream, the status effect, then yeah, it would be a lot harder. But that's also why it's still kind of hard. Let's assume that It's All a Dream decreases Doom by 2 per mystery, so overall 10 Doom decrease, you're probably going to take just as much Reason / Doom damage, so yeah, still kind of hard, but... And then the events as well. The events that lend itself to either more Reason loss or more Reason loss. And then I think there's one specific event, aside from 2 Doom 10 experience, Otherworld, I keep forgetting what the rightmost choice is, but it's an event with 3 choices. Again, it's not the hardest thing in the world, but if you don't know what you're doing, you can quickly increase your Doom, and then it's like... But we're assuming you know what to do, but even with that, you're still obviously you're making decisions that can hurt you more, so... In a way, it's still RNG. It's like 1 or 2 really negligible, yeah, so... Think not, look up the wiki, 4 events, 5 stats, rip. Huh, really? I swear knowledge has increased through Zectast before, but maybe I am wrong about that. But if that's the case, again, still it's big RNG. Just like Cthulhu in terms of you're making decisions in the best interest of, you know, not dying to stamina, Reason, or Doom, but you don't know what's going to happen in the future. But still, you can make informed decision. I think that's the healthier part of Cthulhu. If in that case, yeah, I'll definitely put it under Yogatag, because Yogatag, on the other hand, as you move into Yogatag, Yogatag is definitely a big RNG fest in that its main mechanic is that it looks at a set of locations, and if you investigate any of them, your Doom increases by 2. I think 2, right? But And at this point, you might ask, well, Jordan, just investigate another location. It's not so bad, right? Your doom only increases by 1, and then you get an event. The problem is the event that you're rolling into. So if Yugateg is looking at apartments, school, I think it's apartment, school, forest, or something like that. It's always a set of 2 or 3, but let's assume that you're doing arms, and then Yugateg looks at the apartment, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna visit the hospital, and then you run into double nurses. So you've essentially just taken more damage than the 2 doom you would have taken, on top of the extra 1 doom for investigating, if you just ignore Yugateg. That's kind of my thought behind it. So essentially what your strategy for this becomes is how I need to manage my doom well in general, basically. Because, yeah, if you avoid... I mean, if you're lucky, and again, I'm assuming with average RNG, but even with average RNG on Harbinger, I don't think it's a good idea to try and avoid Yugateg things. The most optimal use is if you can do a side quest, because at least you'll get experience or something like that. But still, though, I don't think Yugateg is also for newer players. If you're playing on Harbinger. If you're playing on True Believer, challenge yourself. Go ahead and challenge yourself, or anything else, but yeah, you'll feel it. Can be anywhere from like 10 to 30% doom increase. Just through Yugateg and its events. Now, Yugateg does have events that decrease doom, but you're trading just as much stamina or reason to decrease the doom. So, yeah, entering locations rerolls Yugateg too. So, if you're gonna reroll locations, or if it doesn't reroll, in the case that Yugateg looks at the same locations, it's just like you just shrug in real life and go, well, guess I'm unlucky, and then you decide to do a village investigation and get bonked by a gardener or something. Or just look at the reads and lose 2 reason, but you get the point. There's some Yugateg stuff involved. I feel like there's 1 or 2 other things I should mention here. But essentially, that's all you'll really feel is Yugateg looking. Now, the other side of this is that if you go into a run where you have a lot of non-town mysteries, you don't have to deal with Yugateg. Yeah, if you have Festival, Scissors, Recluse in your run, those definitely help with avoiding Yugateg, but aside for that, yeah. And then, yeah, I think some locations as well also reroll if someone in chat is right. I feel pretty sure about that. I feel like you're right about that. But still, overall, though, you can't always do non-town mysteries, and for some characters, not starting out in a town mystery is kind of bad, so essentially you're still praying for some RNG, but you can take, like, when you understand World of War more, which is what this tier list is kind of based on, yeah, your doom is going to kind of increase here and there. In fact, it could be even lower for some players, but I think for the average player, it's it's still a hard god to go against at times. Anyway, down to Katak and Itotu, which could be higher actually, but bare minimum, good enough in terms of challenges. That's what I'm trying to say. Good enough challenge. So Katak should be quite obvious. Not being able to run from some encounters means that some characters or backstory combinations means that you run into an enemy that you don't like to fight or can't fight well, and you have to fight them, along with just some encounters in the game, like the easy encounter. For those who don't know what I mean by that, the easy encounter equals the Roomba Ghost in the mansion. Or just ghost encounters in general, but really ghost encounters, or the few bad enemies that you can't quite get rid of in one turn reliably in a vacuum of quick play runs. You have consistent strats, but you're still taking like 2-3 all. You're still taking 4 stamina, 4 reason, something like that. So yeah, and then just for a little fun, Easter egg. What am I trying to say? For information, the reason why I call it the easy encounter is because, yes, I think someone somewhere in the Discord channel called Roomba Ghost the easy encounter, and I was just like, oh, pain. This is after Harbinger came out, I'm pretty sure, but I can't remember. Either that or I'm paraphrasing, but you get the point. Not being able to run for encounters kind of is, can be a big negative. It essentially removes something big from your ability to run away. While you could grab pocket knives, usually it's not, it's not to your benefit to go looking for them in the hardware store, the hardware store. And then Katak has its own events that, the spider bites that lower your stats. So again, overall a negative. There are a few positives here and there, but overall just negatives. I don't think there's anything that's explicitly a positive that comes out from Katak. I can't remember. I think you get a ring. You get rings here and there, but Unless you get the strength increasing ring, you're pretty much not using anything else. But you could, but on average, I don't really see people using it. It's like literally watch people use it. So yeah, Katak overall. Now, I could compare it to other old gods, but in that case, yeah, it's still easier than Ziktask, easier than Azal, because the way you deal with it is that you prepare before obviously entering any encounters, but being able to predict so for example, if you have Hell and Vigil, then you're gonna run to the whole Rin thing or you're gonna run to the Rumu Ghost. So you either prepare to rest afterward or you actually get a pocket knife, because otherwise you're just gonna get slapped for like 6 ul or 9 reason or something like that. So shrug. Rumu's the easy encounter because there are no tactics involved. You see that face, yeah. But anywho, yeah, so that's Katak. Not really much else to say. One of the first 4 old gods you get, but it is the difficult challenge that new players can immediately run into. And it's kind of odd because I think the Ico normal run, just as a cheeky little tangent here, the Ico run that's given to you at the main menu is Katak, which removes like a big part of, being able to run from encounters. Yeah, but at the same time, you could argue for everything else except maybe Ath, because people don't use spells as much, but we'll move into it though too. We'll talk about Ath later and why Ath is in the lull tier. But Though kind of not the flip side of Katak, but definitely on the perpendicular in terms of everyone's damage increases by 1. So the enemy does 1 more damage, 1 more all, 1 more reason, 1 more stamina, 1 more doom, but you also do 1 more damage to them. Now, this is both positive and negative, but normally on Harbinger it's a negative because the damage that they deal to you means a lot more than usually the damage you deal to them. And by that I mean the damage they deal to you can just end up killing you over 2 or 3 turns. But on the flip side, the damage you deal to some enemies means that you can reliably 2-shot them, or in some cases 1-shot them. So Thotu is that double-edged blade on top of Thotu events, which aren't, they're kind of standard for looking at the overall effects of old god events, where I think Thotu raises doom by 2, but you get, Thotu Flame, the spell, which is, situationally useful, but at least 1 reason healing when you forget it. And I think some of them you get 10 experience, but you get 2 doom, 3 doom, 4 doom increase, but still, that's kind of standard in terms of old god events. Not really anything too different, because on the flip side of Thotu, again, I need to say that, is that if you get Kana, if you get Protective Carvings, then you're taking normal damage, but dealing extra damage against any other enemy, which normally helps out for fast, accurate attacks, or big attacks that happen to break a threshold, where you can also maybe be able to brace. So if you do 6 or 7 or 8 damage, but you can brace reliably, then yeah, Thotu can be in your benefit. But there are the other 50% of the time you're also dealing with pain. There's like a 4 doom event too, yeah. So assuming that much, that's still kind of substandard, or kind of standard, a little bit much, but can be standard because you already have getting lost and getting 4 doom as a general event. But yeah, if there's anything else to say, please remind me later on. I'll be happy to rewind back, but I mean, it's good to get at least, like, for timestamp sake at least, to my idea on each old god. But moving on to Goizo. Goizo, you might wonder, well, especially if you're a player that likes resting, then yeah, sure, but when we're working with the guidelines, Goizo specifically, you should know not to rest if possible, and other ways to either recover life or save life. That's really what it turns to. So at this point, and this can be, what's the word I'm looking for? This can be confundeling, that's not really a word, but it can be confusing, I guess is the paraphrase here, for players who don't really see any other way to, to keep healthy aside from resting, which is often a normal pitfall for a lot of, not pitfall, but resting is something that you normally, I see newer players of World of War do too much, even within the past month. They rest like 4 times, and even on a non-Harbinger difficulty, resting up to like 16, 17 stamina reason. But that's reasonable because, you don't know the game yet. And like literally, you don't know if trying to save the dog is a good idea or not. So you end up resting because you fail to save dog, or you drop into a hole into the forest and you're like, well, now I only have like 6 stamina. But Goizo's here, like Goizo's exact effect if nothing else, you should be wary of it, but you really should be trying to avoid rests. And once you learn that you have bonuses like Restless, you have the Bath for as long as it's available. Because I've seen people die because they lost, literally because they lost Bath and they couldn't heal, so you shouldn't drop that low. But then the other half of it is learning to be efficient in encounters mainly, and obviously learning your events and taking the risks that you can take. But really, really encounters, knowing, even without learning to brace, going for good turns where you prep attack, or you do 3 boost attacks into a calculated, 2 attack, and the other one is using Desperate Struggle. So this is basically a mini battle guide, literally those 3 things. Brace more if on 3 damage, prep attack if you just want to turn your brain off. But for Goizo, that you will end up paying. Four pieces of advice, but let's keep moving on. 3rd, use Desperate Struggle for the love of everything when possible. But usually if you're on Goizo, you shouldn't be dropping that low unless you're playing on Harbinger. Again, this is for people playing on non-Harbinger as well. Or mainly, sorry. But this tier list is based on Harbinger, so please use Desperate Struggle. And then 4th is running away. So, Goizo, this is literally the flip side of Katak, where in Katak, you can't run away from the Rumu Ghost. So, we'll use Rumu Ghost as an example here. So in Katak, you can't run away from the Rumu Ghost, but you can rest normally. So any damage you take from the Rumu Ghost, you can eventually rest away. But on Goizo, resting costs 5 dooms, but if you run into the Rumu Ghost when you're in a Goizo run, you can just run away. So, and I think in that situation, and that's also why Goizo is under Katak, you lose less HP overall, Doom, Stamina, and Reason than fighting the Rumu Ghost. So Goizo gives curses. Goizo gives curses. Oh, if so, that can be quite nasty. But I still argue that's worse than with average RNG, or in an average run, even with a bad curse here and there, it's not so bad. Now, obviously, if you get Brandon into Survivor's Guilt on your 2nd mystery, sure, but that's normally not going to happen. So compared to Katak, where you can't run at all, you get bitten, you lose Dexterity and Perception. It's not so great. But you might be, if you have any other reason to persuade me otherwise, I can be persuaded. But I still think Goizo's under Katak for this reason. Still, though, like I said, the flip side, so the 4 pieces of advice, the 4th one being, run away from an encounter if you're going to lose more than 3 HP. If you take 3 all, that's kind of much too, but that's technically 6 HP. So what I mean by that is if you run into, say, the Obsessed Man in downtown, you take 3 stamina damage, that's fine, but you don't want to you want to optimally take 2 damage or less. If you take 3, you can take a few of those, but if you take any more than 3 damage in any encounter, whether it's 4 stamina, 4 reason, or, even maybe sometimes 2 all, then yeah, you just want to run away, because knowing that resting costs, and that you won't always be able to get the Restless bonus. Maybe you lose Bath, maybe you don't want to recover during a level up, then yeah, you want to just run away from encounters. You lose experience for it, but again, it depends on your situation, and from what I've seen, for a lot of players playing on Harbinger, Goizo is not so bad. So, shrug. Moving on to Herald, however. Herald can be up here in the normal good enough challenge, but from what I've seen, it's, I would put it up here, but that's me. That's more subjective. Objectively, a lot of people have normally worked around town effects. Obviously, the bad ones are if immediately after your first mystery you get roads closed, I think in some cases Blood Moon, but then after that is you lose Bath, or you lose the intermission Bath, or your Bath now heals less. Those are the 4 main town effects you're trying to avoid. Sometimes 6th floor of the lighthouse, sometimes Dog Shop if you use Dog Shop, sometimes Seaside if you get drenched and you have Sailors and Old Gods Forbid Metamorphosis, but hey, I'm playing Herald Run, and for the first 2 town events you get Contaminated Water, Roads Closed. What would be your live reaction? Yeah, be sad. Minimum, be sad. I think I've actually death slammed before, but yeah, but then again, in a vacuum of quick play runs, normally that doesn't happen. And even if it does happen, it still depends on your character, character backstory combination and mystery combination, sorry. Ooh, I should have done mysteries as well. But I guess I'll make that as a video as a bonus. But yeah, Herald here is pretty Usually not so bad. Town effects you're not really as worried about. Funny enough, in my opinion, I think Herald's events are the most painful, aside from, losing Bath and less efficient bats in after your first mystery. Because Herald's events are normally, you gotta risk an injury or you get doom increases, so... Shrug, but from what I've seen in general, it's not so bad to worry about. If there is something to worry about, let me know. I'll gladly bump it up to good enough challenge, but from what I've seen, Herald is not so bad. But even after your second or third mystery, losing Bath or getting less efficient bats can be a bit of an oof. It's just a matter of, like Goizo, you have ways to kind of work around what happens to you. Not as much, actually, so let me actually put Herald above Goizo here. And yeah, but again, I don't really mind putting in good enough challenge. Yeah, you know what? Actually, I'm going to put in good enough challenge. Because, yeah, these do have quite significant effects, in my opinion, that people kind of glance over. Mainly things like Blood Moon, roads closed, for if I didn't mention it already. Especially on a vacuum of quick play runs, yeah, roads closed here can mean a lot more. But I still put it under Katak and Atotu because these two have more situations that are kind of not checkmate against you, but they can really cripple you in your run, as opposed to Herald. And Atotu specifically is the fact that you might have a lot of boss encounters, so even if you prepare for them, you're taking like 2 to 4, all damage, 6 stamina, 6 reason. Katak, you might be, Ruma Ghost, other bad encounters, double nurses on a coma ward run. Whereas Herald, it's like, yeah, you do get roads closed, but you still have access to all other options. Like, you could be Aika, you could be Toshiaki, you could be Koji with, a good setup. So, yeah. Anywho, moving on to our last lull god, which is going to be Ath. So, Ath, the main reason it's in the lull tier is because spells have pretty much... Spells are completely optional in World of Horror. There are a few that you want to use because overall they're going to be optimal in your situation because you're not going to need the... Essentially, the risk-reward factor of a few spells are very, very, very low risk. And the requirements to use them in terms of when you want to use them as well are not so bad. But the other 80% of spells in the game rat current are either very situational or near useless in terms of Harbinger and the guidelines I've set for this tier list. So you don't feel the effects. On top of that, the few spells that are very, very good are not affected by Ath, funny enough. So, yeah, that's, and then a few spells you actually want to spend Doom, because on Harbinger, if you lose HP while spending, for example, the Strength, the spell that increases your Strength, or Knowledge if you're using a Knowledge weapon run, on a run, spell, those cost instead 5 Doom instead of 4 Reason, which, you have more Doom to work with, and if I could increase a stat with 5 Doom twice in a run, I would do it, basically. That's how good it is to increase stats at your leisure. Now, if they're Dexterity or Perception, maybe not, but it depends on the character still. Like, a character that has 5 Perception, I can see them using an Army Knife. A character that has high Dexterity, I don't know what to do, actually, but basically every other stat other than Dexterity, I see a use. I'm not trying to dunk on Dexterity, it's just... But, well, Brick, really, if you want to use Brick, so... A Brick for Dexterity, really. That's the serious answer, but aside from that, like, I'm trying to go over how bad Ath can be. I think, funny enough, the hardest thing that Ath has, aside from maybe an event or two, is the Glitched Magician fight, which is the only fight you can fight. It's the only thing you can... when you're in an Ath run, you can only fight the Glitched Magician in an Ath run. You can fight a normal Magician in any other run, but it's not... I think you can run away, and if you can't, correct me. But 2, I don't think you have the action limiter. And the reason why the Glitch Magician is a bit scary, I'm going to explain why in a moment, without looking at chat, but the reason why the Glitch Magician is a bit scary is because it does 3 Doom damage, and you can't run away, and then you have the action limitation, which, without that, it would actually not be so bad. But it's also still not bad, because, as I said, it's only a bit dangerous, because you can still brace, which means, if you have, like, 5 or 6 strength, you can kind of punch him for about 5-6 Doom and be perfectly fine. As if you're doing things properly. And that's kind of like a bad case anyway, in the average case, you're not taking more than 3 or 4 Doom, so, and you're still getting experience, whereas some events in-game just give you 3 or 4 Doom. So, yeah. I tried a long time to watch, really must be bad. They haven't unlocked most of these. Oof. Yeah, it's not so bad. Yeah, some achievements are annoying. Yeah, it's just that some achievements are annoying to unlock. But other than that, like, if you're just using, you can just use custom characters, all things, if you know how to do it. But at specifically, yeah, those are the 3 main factors. One, you're not really using spells because there are only like 20% of your spells that exist in game you can get. Secondly, whether you're getting spells at all, because, you know, you're not guaranteed to get a spell unless you visit the library, which is not a location that most people use on Harbinger, just if we're looking at a data set. 3, the spells that, the other 80% of spells are very conditional and have very situational requirements in terms of making them efficient. And then 4, well, spells, if when you forget spells, they're for a reason anyway. And then some spells are not, the good spells that you can use, a lot of them, either it benefits you to make them Doom costs, or to make them cost Doom instead on Ath, or they're just not affected by the Doom, by Ath shrug. We're talking about Ghostly Spirit Mind Drain, but there are a few other ones that, you know, Ath doesn't do anything, which can be good and can be bad, funny enough, but the way it is right now, Ath is, I think if I had to do 9 Ath runs, or try to fight each old god like my Nuzlocke, I would rather do 9 Ath runs. It's hard to find, and Ath gives you a spell immediately as well, so that's, as I just mentioned, there's a very low chance you get a spell where it's like, oh, this costs, no, actually no, because you're at the very beginning of your run, and so when you have all that Doom to spend, you can kind of just look at the spell that Ath gives you and go, yeah, I'm gonna use it. Otherwise, it's like, okay, I guess it's just reason healing. That's really, like, if we're being serious for a moment here in terms of criticism, if you want to make Ath harder, let's not say I don't give any suggestions. Yeah, if you want to make Ath harder, you can still give 1, maybe even 2 spells, but you guarantee that using a spell either, you know, increases Doom by 1 or 2, or maybe does a random negative effect, like gives you a random injury, curse, or decreases your stamina or reason by 1 or 2, or decreases your Doom by something like that. That would make Ath a bit more dangerous. But it's only a bit more because, like I said, spells aren't used anyway, so maybe another condition, like, unless you use a spell, like, and again, Ath gives you maybe a spell or 2 at the beginning, or a spell after every mystery on top of the one it gives you. If you don't use a spell, your Doom increases by like 5 or something like that. That's really kind of the band-aid fix, but aside from that, no. And I say 5 because 5 is, you know, 25% Doom. No one's going to not cast a spell if that were ever a thing, but... And I swear I didn't get this from one of the challenge runs I did, like, years ago, but that's how you would make Ath, you know, that's how you'd make players respect Ath a bit more. And that's gonna be all about that. Cthulhu and Yogatag. Oh, so, yeah, I don't remember the achievements to get Cthulhu and Yogatag, but in any case, this is the tier list from top to bottom, most difficult to less difficult. Love it, hate it, criticize it, suggest otherwise, but for the moment, I think this is, I don't think I'm too off from what objective, if numbers could talk, numbers would say. But I'm definitely sure that there are some players that would rate things differently. Maybe Katak higher or lower, maybe Thotu higher or lower. Mainly these two. I don't know many. Unless you play, again, we're looking at the guidelines I set, right? So at a vacuum of quick play runs, that where your settings are pretty much set, where, so, you know, random timeline, well, obviously sudden death, other things, whether you have random character perks or random, and in this case, since this is not the character list, we'll say your character is random as well. So, yeah, and some of them don't matter, like if you get Aiko, Aika, Toshiaki, then yes, all of these, like, you're not going to see much of a difference because they're going to stomp on mostly all of these bosses. But if you get Yumiko, Yumiko's going to have a bad time on all of these bosses except for Ath. But you get what I mean. But yeah, please let me know if you feel anything different. We're going to move into backstories in a moment, so let me just take a drink because my mouth and throat. Ow. Ow. My lips. But anywho, yeah, let's move to backstories. Again, these are not yet rated from left to right, but I will go left to right in terms of, just doing them. So, Ill-Fated. For people with average RNG, Ill-Fated is quite a huge debuff, but you still get experience to level up. So for some characters, basically for a good amount of characters, starting off with a level up is helpful. For the rest, not as much, but again, the other positive is that a lot of characters, especially on Harbinger, because Harbinger removes one of every stat, then you can still expect to fail a lot of events anyway, and if you were already expecting that, whether that's true or not, all this really does is you look at an event and go, okay, would I rather take 2 reason damage or get 2% Doom or 1 stamina? Something like that, because you know you're always going to fail, except for the Hospital Elevator event. Actually, I should explain that. For those who don't know, the elevator event in the hospital is actually true RNG. It's not affected by Ill-Fated. It's only looking at your luck check, or your luck stat, and then rolling a 1d12. I feel 80% sure of that, because I've run tests around it. I forgot if I did an event of the day, but essentially that's how that one works. But aside from that one event, Ill-Fated is a big, again, like I said for one of the old gods before, it's a big knowledge check, so knowing what you can and cannot take here and there. I forgot if there's anything else, but meh. And the only other way, because I don't even, I don't think any perk that quote unquote results in guaranteed success is guaranteed, because all they really do is increase their modifier by 13. Ill-Fated increases the modifier by 99, which does mean if for whatever reason you make certain characters and they have over 101 or 102 in a stat, they will still pass checks on Ill-Fated, but shrug, right? So, but I still personally don't feel it's above all. Yeah, I don't think it's above these 3, but I have to actually review them first, at least here. But for the moment, I definitely know it's again, top to bottom difficult, backstories to less difficult. I think it's still like pretty difficult, so we'll leave this up in S tier for the moment. There's something else to say. There's something else to say, but yeah, you have a level up, sure, but Ill-Fate is still gonna deal a lot of damage because you can't succeed events, and in some events you just take an injury or something. So I'm looking at the Forest Watchers. But anywho, moving into Knight Errant. The backstories might be quicker, but I still should talk about them here and there because there are things to talk about. Knight Errant, on the other hand, Knight Errant. So Knight Errant is a bit of a finicky one. It depends on your mystery combination. So if you get like Botanist, Recluse, Hell, Footage, and Vigil, you'll be having a harder time than if you had usually things like Scissors, Recluse, Festival, Ramen, and Coma. The reason for this is that a lot of mysteries are not actually number-wise optimal overall. Like if you're looking at a vacuum of runs, your average case is going to be that if you try to go for ending A, you're going to receive more damage in the usual case. Maybe that's not true, maybe it's a bit more average, but still, regardless whether you do ending A or not, and for those who don't know, if you don't take ending A, quote-unquote, as the game says here, if you get a sub-A ending, then you take 6% Doom at the end of the mystery. But if you go for ending A, in some cases, you're taking just as much Doom damage in Doom than you are, if you had done it. Now, that does mean that you get at least, you get the bonuses from doing ending A or thorough investigations, which are 15 experience. For ending A, sometimes you get something else, or you avoid certain effects, but that just comes with doing ending A or not. But as it is right now in version 1.01, we can go over a few mysteries just to kind of give the example. So for example, Cape or / Akamanto. In Akamanto, if you get ending A, you're fighting a harder boss, but you don't get the Crestfallen Mask. So while your Doom doesn't increase by 6 on Knight Errant, when you do ending A Cape, you probably take a bit more damage because unlike ending A Akamanto, true Akamanto is an Eldritch enemy, which means what you would normally see me do is handcuff Akamanto, but you can't, and I think he has more HP. I think he has like 36 base HP, which can be upwards of 40, 42, which, for some characters, you're just eating damage left and right, so you're probably taking, let's even be nice and say you take 4 all damage. But to rest and recover that 4 all damage, you need to rest twice and spend 6 doom, so... Shrug! But if you don't do ending A and you go for ending B, what happens is, one, you can handcuff Akamanto, which means you can take upwards of even maybe, let's even say 3 all, sure. But while you take the Knight Errant penalty, you get the Crestfallen Mask, which decreases your Doom by 10. So overall, your Doom decreases by 4 by doing ending A. Now you will need to rest, but that's what I mean by, in this case, you know, it's near, if you're not prepared in the average case, you're taking just as much damage or losing just as much Doom or HP than you would, you know, doing ending A here. Because in this case, on ending B, you rest and then you take 6 Doom, but you decrease Doom by 10, so your Doom decreases by 1, but you get Knight Errant. But if you do ending A, Akamanto, yeah, your Doom doesn't increase by 6, but you have to rest twice because Akamanto smacked you a bunch or something, so... You do the math. But anywho, it depends on your situation. For another example is Botanist. Botanist is one of the worst examples where Botanist, to do ending A at all, you need to have mermaids in your run, because you need the fire axe to cut your way out at the end of Botanist, after doing the side quest as well. That's a small negative, but if you do an event and you run into like the young witch and you get smacked, sure, but then after that, assuming you get the fire axe, I don't remember if you need the fire axe equipped. If you do, that's another negative. And then after all that, you have to survive the 3 or 4 all damage that the boss of Botanist is smacking you with, and with the max stamina and reason of 13 on Harbinger, yeah, either take 6 Doom or die 50% of the time minimum. So maybe you get Book of Gore, but take 3 injuries instead, I guess, randomly. So I don't really know if you want that. So, and then let's say let's say throw in a third example randomly, Recluse. Recluse, in its efficiency use case, you're not really getting a lot of Doom in Recluse anyway, so whether you do ending A or not doesn't really matter. And in ending A, I think when you don't sacrifice the doll right, you get something that removes curses, so you're going for ending A anyway, right? Because you're not, unless you really need the fleshy toy, like you're about to do Flood, that's really the main use case in which you would avoid that. So you take 6 Doom, but you have more reason for Flood, sure. But aside from that, if Flood is not in your run and you have Recluse, it only benefits you to do ending A, because you get a curse removal, you avoid 6 Doom, and then Recluse overall usually doesn't increase your Doom by a lot. Yeah, you take a lot of reason damage, but overall you're taking less HP. So again, just 3 mysteries. Knight Errant isn't so bad. Like, yeah, if we're looking at objectively, in my opinion, it's a bit higher with my bad RNG, but really, I'll say bottom of S. Yeah, we'll say bottom of S, because there are a lot of runs as well where it's just not really good. You'll be getting a lot of Knight Errant penalties, and let's assume you even get minimum 2 Knight Errant penalties. That's 12% Doom on top of a character that may already need a weapon. So you're working with a lot of Doom. You get roads closed after your second mystery, and you have like Botanist and Vigil left. It can be very not good. Extra Doom here is very not good. Do you get any positive? Oh yeah, you get the Inspiring Novel. Hooray! You do, but I'm trying to think. The Inspiring Novel is very useful, don't get me wrong. I'm trying to think though. How much HP does it save? It can save a lot, but if you run to Recluse, you're not using it there. Actually, yeah, you know what? With the Inspiring Novel, I'm gonna bump this up. Top of A, definitely. But still, though, you can get very... No, bottom of S. Definitely below Ill-Fated, in my opinion. Because of how damaging the Doom increase can be overall, even with the Inspiring Novel. Because you could take Akamanto, use the Inspiring Novel, and then just not fight anyone but Akamanto. It'll still give you a great benefit there, but you could take Ward, pop the Inspiring Novel, run into the Obsessed Man, and be like, sure. But still, yeah, it's not great. And then you Old Gods Forbid, you have both. Yeah. So anywho, overall, even with average RNC, IG, I think there's some bad things that can happen here. Anyway, moving from left to right from ill-fated, Eldritch Parasite. Eldritch Parasite shouldn't go without. Actually, for a lot of people, I think it's really only A for whatever reason with average RNG, but I still think it's S. I think it's above Knight Errant. And let's explain. So just the mechanics of Eldritch Parasite. You can't recover any stamina or reason, and then you can't, but you start off with more max stamina and reason, but you can't recover any stamina or reason. So the reason why this is up here, I think a big part of this, in my opinion, is that for stamina damage, or for events that have a penalty in them. So for example, when you go into, say, a max threat level or high threat level downtown, and you're supposed to heal stamina, what actually happens is because you can't recover an Eldritch Parasite, the game reads, oh, you're taking penalty damage because of a high threat level. And so what happens is it says +2 stamina, but you only gain 1 stamina. Or it says +1 stamina, or like, nothing, but you take stamina. Yeah, no. You take, it says you heal 2 stamina or 1 stamina, but you take 1 stamina damage instead. Why does that happen? Because you can't recover stamina or reason in Eldritch Parasite, but you're still taking penalty damage in the location. So you're taking penalty damage and you can't recover, which means you lose stamina or reason overall. Is that a bug? Sure, but that does mean in its current state, version 1.01, you're losing more HP than you need to, which can end up killing you on Eldritch Parasite. So, and as you notice, I came up with a very specific strategy for Eldritch Parasite that, might not be the most consistent, but it's consistent for me. And for everyone else who runs Eldritch Parasite consistently, I can only salute you, because, man, overall it is also a big knowledge check, because you want to try to balance your damage relative to how much stamina and reason you can take. But for the most part, you usually need more than 33 reason or stamina in a run. Or if you're playing as a spoiler character, somehow manage your doom, I guess. But I don't know. Maybe this is lower. I feel like at max it's also top of A, but definitely above Knight Errant because of the unfortunate thing with threat levels. But to me, I feel like that's a big part of it. Maybe it's not, but with average RNG in a vacuum of Harbinger quick play runs, I think it does play a big effect. On top of the difficulty of already playing through whatever old god and or character combination you have, along with the mysteries you're taking. So really quickly, Katak Ruma Ghost. But anywho, let's move on to Commoner. So Commoner backstory. I haven't played a lot of Commoner backstory. That might be the focus of the next week, Commoner and or Yumiko. The big workaround is supposed to be History Club, but I don't often feel that's a very consistent pick. It might be, but you still need a weapon with characters that don't start off with a weapon anyway. I think it is above Eldritch Parasite, Knight Errant. I think it's above Ill-Fated as well, because of the other effective level up. So specifically what I think is happening in Commoner is that whenever you gain experience, Commoner just sets your experience down to 0, which, functionally it does its mechanic, but I don't think there are literally no effects, because I think Commoner is the last backstory Panstas added, and it's essentially, if Panstas didn't say it themselves, then it's the matter of, it's just meant to be a challenge backstory, which is why it deserves top of the list. But at the same time, you can still, there are not workarounds, but you have to, if you were to try and play through a run, there are ways to try to play through the run. History Club is the most prevalent example, but that's assuming you've unlocked History Club. But if you've unlocked Commoner, you've likely unlocked like a good 50 to 75% of your achievements. And if you're deciding to play on Commoner, boy, have a good time. Because I think the other part of Commoner is the accuracy decrease from not leveling up. For those that don't know, each level in game adds 10% to your base accuracy. So not being able to level up, on top of not getting any other perks through level up, instead of just spending Doom at the History Club, not being able to increase your stats on a Old Gods Forbid Zigtast Commoner run is not very good, which means on a Zigtast Commoner run, your run becomes how quickly can I complete the run. Straight up. Guns aren't out too, but they're less viable than Harbinger. Yeah, so guns are, not as great. So, Commoner backstory, it makes the rich richer and the poor poorer. And by that I mean Ayaka, Toshiaki, and Ayaka don't have as much of a problem. Aika and Toshiaki are special cases, but still, compared to other characters, still, in my opinion, they might have a little bit of worse time, but I don't think they have that bad of a time. Toshiaki and Aika, though, do suffer here and there. Toshiaki specifically suffers at least the most out of the 3 top-tier characters, because you can't get his pages from the History Club, I'm pretty sure. But Aika, you can get her perks from the History Club. The problem is that if you're on an all-perk run due to quick play, that changes a bit, and then their stats are also low on a task run specifically. So in that case, yeah, never mind. Let me revise my statement. They do worse than the average character on that, but you would have to get Zectast with the commoner backstory. But still, it does apply. And in general, the normal things that happen on commoner, where you can't get any experience. The one upside is if you get Azal and you get the experience roll, you don't suffer, but that's a very small plus in a sea of negatives. So, yeah, definitely top here. So let's move on. Curious Birthmark. So Curious Birthmark. Well, the reason why Curious Birthmark, and you might be looking at both Curious Birthmark and Medical History here, the reason why these both are... Curious Birthmark is above Medical History, at least a tier above, is because you don't normally have a way to remove curses, as opposed to injuries where you have free reign to flexibly remove a lot of injuries, and then there are also... Well, let's assume that there are same number of bad curses there are to bad injuries, because there are a handful of bad injuries and there are a handful of bad curses. But again, like I said, the main comparison here is that there are less ways to remove curses and injuries, and that's fine as a design decision. It does mean that Curious Birthmark can be bad overall, but the reason why it's not S is because you also still have, like, if you're playing efficiently, you're not getting hit as much by enemies if possible. So you have less chances to proc random curses and whatnot. Now, it's still dangerous because it's random, but because it's random, it's still in that realm of, okay, on average, you're not going to get that many curses or that many injuries, maybe like 5 or 6 tops, but how many of them are really going to be the bad ones that you hate? Now, if you get 6 flashbacks in a row, just die, I guess, but still, like, it's not the worst thing that can happen. And I think you also get an old coin to remove a bad curse, so yeah, you do get an old coin to remove a bad curse here, so it's not the end of the world, but it's still, I think, worse than Medical History, whereas as we move into Medical History, and also this Curious Birthmark benefits Ayaka, but as you move to injuries, while there aren't a lot of ways for characters to benefit from Medical History, you do get 20 experience, which helps out, and you do get the chance to remove every single injury you want, especially if you have the school nurse, so you can just cleanse a bunch of minor injuries for 3 doom. You can remove those injuries and maybe they're another discharge summary. But if you get badly bleeding, cut artery, and or, you know, a lot of dislocated shoulders, you're going to start to feel it, but less so than, in my opinion, than Curious Birthmark. So not really much else to say. There are some characters that don't like Medical History as much because when you proc certain injuries on them, it hurts their ability to do certain things. Like, you know, a lot of dexterity related injuries, you're using a steak knife or you're using the brick, and you're just like, well, I can't prep attack anymore. Or you get, like I said, you get cut artery, something like that, and you lose a bunch of stamina and reason, and you don't have any way to recover it because you're not Moriko with Daddy's Girl, or you can't fight really well in general. And so you're just taking extra damage. But compared to Curious Birthmark, I think the curses here can be a lot more dangerous than the injuries. It's just that the injuries coming at an inopportune time can be just as bad, if not worse, than curses on Curious Birthmark. Bad injuries are worse than bad curses, but you can remove them at least. Yeah, and so that's the thing. So like I just said, even if there are worse injuries than curses, you can remove them, as opposed to curses, you don't really have free reign to remove them at will. More often than you do injuries, so I'm not going to say that I haven't run into injuries where I'm just like, well, guess I'll die. But they have crippled me and caused me to die. Mainly badly bleeding and or cut artery. Cut arm sinew, which lowers their damage. Mangled hand, which can proc stamina loss per attack. Those are definitely very, very bad. Worse than even, I'd say, branded and or, 2 stacks of suicidal or paranoia, but you can remove them. So... And that's why they're just under, because funds aren't normally the hardest thing to get, and if you had to spend 4 doom to remove the, losing 1 stamina per investigation, do so. Anywho, on to Exquisite Taste. I want to put Exquisite Taste higher, but most players don't really see a problem here. So, consistency-wise, I don't think it's too hard. So, for those who don't know, Exquisite Taste, you can only set one sublocation, so you have to choose between Rest or Prepare at home. Most people choose Rest. There aren't a lot of moments when you choose Prepare, unless you're playing Haru, but even then, some people just decide to just, I'll take my funds from the tree and I don't need a cigarette case. Or in the case of, you know, Aika or Toshiaki, don't need the extra speed increase because we're about to get perks or whatnot, so on and so forth. So Exquisite Taste, not the most impactful for a lot of players. I might even put it lower, but I do think you do run into a couple situations where you're like, do I want to set a store or do I want to set Monument? Because for characters like Kyrie, any character that doesn't start with a weapon, Kyrie, Koji, Juri, you need to choose between shops here and there. And Police Station is pretty much a near gimme. I think Police Station is the consistent pick, which locks you out of a Cult Shop, Dog Shop. You could do a Cult Shop if you need to play Kyrie or a Knowledge character, but again, that's why I put it in B. I think you can definitely still work around it. It's not bad, but it's not the best either. And then there's the Seaside, which is the biggest contender of punching shops or monuments out of the way. Because you're like, okay, maybe I want Heart of Store, maybe I want Illegal Den. Most people pick Monument, but I'm not sure. But still, yeah. It only affects you at the beginning of the run, really. But it does make a big difference over the course of your run. So, anywho, yeah, not much else to say. I say it's all it really does, but it does have an impact in your run. Not the biggest, but definitely bigger than normal, I think. Depending on your character, God's backstory as well. Because if you run to, like I said, not commoner, if you're running an all-perk run, then you're like, I want to use History Club because I don't know if I'm going to get Blood Mania. I think picking Prep or Rep is a minor choice. Yeah, so, again, like someone just said in chat, as I've observed, people picking between things like Rest, Prepare, not really something they think about, and they do just fine. So me, I put this a little higher, at tops, bottom of A, but not really too impactful because you usually have a strategy in mind, and it's not so bad. It's not the biggest impact in your run. Which is still why it's a below Medicalist. Might even be below Fatalist. Yeah, I'm going to put it below Fatalist, because as we move into Fatalist... So, Fatalist backstory. We're going to assume you know your mysteries. And for those who don't know, I'll say it really quickly here, because maybe this is the only World of War video you watch. But for Fatalist, so there are 5 mysteries on your board. However, 2 of them, the ones in the middle of the one in the middle left and the one in the middle right, center right, they still have their icons. So what I mean by that is each mystery has its own specific unique icon when it appears on the board, unless you're using custom mysteries, but we're assuming there are none of that. And so if you know what those icons, if you can identify those icons, you know what 2 of your mysteries in Fatalist are going to be. However, that doesn't change the fact that you have 3 mysteries in waiting. So the reason why Fatalist I think is right in the middle here is because you're not normally going to get, you know, you're not going to see, oh, I have 2 mysteries. It's Akamanto and Flood. And then right after that, you run into Metamorphosis, Timeline B, Arms, and Scissors. That's not normally going to happen. But it can happen a little bit more than not. So that's why I think it's in the middle here. Basically big RNG. But because you can still identify 2 mysteries, you're not doing as bad. Like, if you couldn't identify any of them, I'd definitely an A tier. But in terms of difficulty. But because you can at least identify 2 and make some reasonable assumptions and guess and take risks here and there, it really is up to the player to make the best of Fatalist. But definitely harder than Exquisite Taste, because I think people obsess less over their the sublocations or actions than they do with the mysteries on the board, especially if you don't know the last 3 mysteries. Again, you could be perfectly going like, oh, maybe it's an easy run because I'm going to take Ramen and I'm going to take Bulletin. And then you have like Metamorphosis, Akamanto, and Flood, and you're just like, well, shrug! So, but I do think it's still under Medical History and Curious Birthmark because these 2, yeah, Curses and Injuries are not nice. You still have to spend something to get rid of bad injuries and curses. So, Fatalist, there's a lot of human error that can happen in Fatalist, and then RNG. But that's RNG and down to human error. We're assuming there are not a lot of human error mistakes here, but we have to still introduce RNG because even it's not human error to not be able to predict that you have Metamorphosis, Flood, and Recluse at the tail end of your 3 mysteries, alright? I don't think that's human error. Anyway, into Hunted by the Cult. So Hunted by the Cult, I actually would put in D, but the only reason why I put it at C above Scars is because the Cultist Hunter, like, when you think about it, right? Yeah, your Doom decreases by 5 overall, but if you just run, or even if you can't run from them, if you get smacked by even just 1 Cultist Hunter here, you're pretty much taking the same amount of damage as 5 Doom. Probably you're still doing off a little better with Doom-wise, unless you run into the Rifle Hunter, but still, basically you're doing a trade-off here, so while it would be in B, I think B is mainly for backstories that at least provide some challenge, or overall are negative in your run. Most of the time, whereas in Cult, it's kind of, C tier is basically breaking even, so let's actually, you know, breaking even, and B is kind of like, yeah, mostly, you know, some, mostly some negative overall. So that's why, yeah, Cult I don't really feel, and I mean, you'll hear me say, at least on my channel, whenever I run to Cult, I'm like, oh yeah, it's Cult, thank you. But then I run to Cultist Hunter, I'm like, Cultist Hunter A, and I'm like, oh, pain. Lots of pain. So, but normally, and it's even RNG whether you run into A and or B, so yeah, and in average, in a vacuum of runs, from what I've seen, not so bad, because I'm like, whew, at least I get 5 Doom decrease over Herald, who gives me time skip, or over Zektast, who is, like, pounding my stats into the ground, 0. But overall, yeah, not really much else to say. That's really the main 2 effects. Now, if there are more cultist members that you could fight later on, sure, but for the moment, the 2 that are given to you are not so bad. Except for Cultist Hunter A, but that's a different story. Anyway, we'll move into Scars. So Scars backstory is under Cult because Scars overall provides you a benefit or breaking even. The only reason I put it in breaking even is because I think people underestimate how bad it can be when you're not running into encounters. So when that happens, let me tell you, even with average RNG, you're gonna feel the pain when you only have 10 max stamina, 10 max reason, or in Mimi's case, 10 max stamina, 7 max reason. But then you run into events back to back to back that just, you lose 5 reason in 2 events and you're like, I'm dying to reason. And then you either have to rest, or if you're in Painting or Vigil, you can't rest, and then you just die. So, but I think overall it is still, you know, at least you're breaking even. Some people might put it in D tier. I'm gonna say breaking even because I think people underestimate what happens there. I mean, they may not lose the run because of it, but I have seen more than a few people play Scars, and then they're resting a lot more than normal, which overall is more Doom, funny enough. It's indirectly more Doom. But in the other half of the cases, like a good number of cases, you're running into encounters, and even I go like, oh, ooh, I have Scars, so encounters won't be as bad. So, and then Old Gods forbid I have Kana and or Protective Carvings, and I do Flood. But still, though, in my case, or like in the average case, you can run into some bad sequence of events, literally and figuratively, and then you just, you know, you lose 5, 6 stamina, you lose 4 all for whatever reason, and you're just like, well, need a heal. But at the same time, you're breaking even because encounters are a lot easier, because Harbinger increases damage by 1, and if you have Scars to lower damage by 1, phew. And again, keeping in mind this is a Harbinger tier list. If you're on an easier difficulty and you have Scars, you're nigh invulnerable. So, yeah, not much else to say about Scars. If there's anything else that I've forgotten that's pretty significant, please let me know. But as we move into the World of Horror backstory, no effect. Like, you have anything you want. It could even be in, yeah, like, if we're saying breaking even, it's C tier. Because, yeah, nothing positive, nothing negative. Not much else to say about that. It's all based on, I mean, to that end, you could say that there is, it's more on the player because you can't really blame a negative effect on a backstory when you have no effects at all. You randomize your town all the time, don't feel as because it tastes that bad, so yeah, yes, you agree with B? Yeah, so, yeah, B is kind of the more, yeah, you know, it can be somewhat challenging, but at the same time, meh. So, Yeah, bottom of B, closer to C. So I think if you and I agree, I'm not saying that it speaks for all players, but I think it's pretty good objective. You know, we're not off by a lot. And then World of War as well, breaking even, lower breaking even, because again, you can't really blame. So Scar's kind of near the top of C, World of War really just breaking even. Not much else to say. 7th Cursed, on the other hand, D tier, so it's not that it's easy, it's that you get more benefits out of it than normal. So while you can't get any allies, and this does hurt characters like Mizuki, in a vacuum of quick play runs where we assume your character is random, even for Mizuki, you can at least buy a weapon, which that's one of the, in my opinion, one of the main reasons why it's a D. At least because when a lot of characters don't. So as you may not have noticed, if you watch a lot of my runs, for characters like Koji, like Juri, like Kyrie, those are the 3 main I think off the top of my head. I'm normally looking for a weapon, so I prepare like 5 or 6 times. I get 10 or 12 Doom, and then I go buy a weapon, and that's 16 Doom. Whereas in 7th Curse, I don't need to prepare at all if I choose not to. And so what ends up happening is I just go into a shop, buy a weapon, or I prepare maybe like 3 times, and I don't get as much Doom. And that extra 5 to 8% Doom that I have to spend in other places is not so bad. And then I'm just like, oh no, I don't get any allies, but that's not really a negative. And allies are an addition, not a subtraction. What I mean by that is that it's not like allies like spells are a mandatory requirement. I was gonna look at Ath. I don't know why I'm looking for Ath on a backstory tier list, but you get the point. So Ath, deals with the mechanic that you are not obligated to ever use in World of War, if that makes any sense. So unless we were obligated to use it tied to the backstory of Old God in this case, again, you don't always want to tie an ally or spells to the game. But if like for example when I said for Ath earlier, if Ath had a rule that forced you to use a spell to avoid a negative effect, then that makes more sense because Ath is all about spells. The same thing here, so 7th Curse is all about not having any allies, or allies dying except for any animals and the Hermit. Then yeah, there's not really a negative here because you're not forced to run into allies, and 2, you're not guaranteed to get an ally unless you run Schoolyard, of course. But there's no ally that's good enough to make an entire strategy around. Yeah, so that's the thing, right? Allies are a nice addition. And yeah, you could run ally attack as Mizuki, but Mizuki can still, as I've seen, work with weapons just fine. It's just that I personally subjectively have a worse time running weapons as Mizuki, but you can, yeah, the funds you get here are pretty good. And I'm not saying you remove the funds from 7th Curse, but if I were to make a change to 7th Curse, it would be to, if, like, I think some rule where an ally has to join you and die somewhere in the run, or you get 7% Doom. You can't force it, unless there's a way to like, maybe there's, yeah, some effect where or maybe just the addition of an event or 2 that, has to deal with something, and it could be anything really, but like, add an event, add something to do with guaranteeing you an ally, but they die. Not having an ally die anywhere in the run causes Doom to increase after the 5th mystery. Something to that effect. If you want it to be like breaking even B, like even with an effect like 7 Doom at the end of the run if an ally doesn't die, would be like breaking even above World of Horror. But that's what I mean by right now, the funds are, again, based on the guidelines I've set for this tier list, more valuable than, oh no, I don't have any allies. That's kind of the 10-second summary, but overall, yeah, it can play an effect, because sometimes you want an ally, but that's a very small negative next to 4 funds, and then you prepare once or twice, and then you get like whatever weapon you want for only 10 or 11% Doom. And then you're happy. So, yeah, that's just, I don't know, maybe there's something else to it that I'm forgetting, but I definitely feel 7th Curse. Whenever anyone gets 7th Curse, I like, 9 out of 10 players go, yeah, perfect. I think, and half of those 1 out of 10 are me when I play music, and I'm like, I can't play ally attack! But anywho. And then it doesn't even stop you, because you can still grab dog allies from the dog event, and then Hermit can randomly appear if you see them in Festival, so yeah, they're an extra, again, they're a nice addition, but they are not a subtraction to your run. So I think this is where I'm comfortably gonna be on the thing. All three of these can literally be here somewhere, and we can move this up here. But for the moment, if I'm looking at it a bit more objectively, I would do this. Now, if I were to make a subjective tier list, it'd be actually be a lot different. But for the moment, definitely Commoner top. Ill-fated mainly because I know a lot of people complain about it, but when I watch a lot of people, they definitely feel it because, yeah, it's both. If it's not player knowledge, it's the fact that they run into bad events, and there are more than a few. Like ill-fated is not always a matter of, oh, I see two choices. Sometimes you're forced to roll, and you roll badly because it's ill-fated. Eldritch Parasite, same thing. Eldritch Parasite could be above ill-fated for some people, but I think I'm still around the ballpark. It's around the A-B tier that I'm a bit unsure of. So, again, if there's anything else to say, please feel free to say it. Otherwise, I think that's going to be where we leave off. Could make a subjective tier list. I think there's one more other thing I could do, but I don't want to keep making tier lists for the rest of the week, so I think we'll leave this at that. And so if you want another review of the Old Gods, here are the Old Gods. Again, from top to bottom, both backstory and Old God tier list. It's essentially most difficult to least difficult. So here are the backstories if you need to pause. But yeah. And then just to answer the question, I can just direct them to the end of this, video / VOD / stream, where top 3 most difficult from left to right, objectively at least, is Commoner, Ill-Fated, Eldritch Parasite. Bottom 3 are easier ones are Stars, World of Horror, 7th Curse. Cult is kind of in the middle, but And then Old Gods, Zictas is all pretty much top 2. Yogathag 3, because you don't really want to avoid Yogathag. Some people might say Kathak Ito2, but once you learn enough of the game based on the guidelines I set for myself, it's not so bad. And then the bottom 3 are like Goizo to some extent, because you're usually using Rest less often. Otherwise, when you're in a Goizo run, you're taking precautions. And then sometimes Herald, sometimes Athotu. I think people would rather say Athotu is one of the bottom 3 or easier gods. But I say Herald because Herald, a lot of people kind of ignore town effects as well, so yeah. Remembering fail penalties is something most players don't pay attention to at the start. Yeah. And so yeah, that's something to think about. But at the same time, like I said, this is assuming you're not making a lot of human errors. But you're not wrong to believe that. That's why I'm kind of looking at my guidelines and going like, but at the same time, But yeah, especially if you're talking about threat level, right? Threat level fail penalties, which the biggest effects are things like just off top, Eldritch Parasite, where you just take damage. But for Old Gods, they do stack up over time. The smaller one is Yogathag. If you have to visit a penalty location that's, high threat level school, and you're trying to avoid the forest for whatever reason, it's like, oh, took penalty damage, die. But anywho, yeah, not much else to say. If you have anything to say it in the minute or two. I'm kind of closing out the stream here. But otherwise, yeah, for Sunday, I'm actually not decided. It might be a World of Horror. I want it to be a World of Horror stream, but I just want to make sure. If anyone has any ideas, again, if you have any ideas, feel free to throw it into the hat, because I have like 3 ideas I'm fishing and like kind of preparing for. But as I'm testing them out, I'm like, maybe it's not. Again, and then I think a 4th just filler one is just going to be Yumiko and or Commoner. But for the moment, we are moving into because I have the weekdays are going to be filled with Yumiko and Commoner anyway. But I think next week maybe I want to split it up, because really I only do videos for 3 days on Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. So maybe this is going to be a week of Yumiko runs, and then the week after this week, coming week, is going to be Commoner runs. But we'll see. We'll see what I ultimately decide to do. But otherwise, yeah, the most important part, I have, some people might look at backstories and be like, yeah, but gods are where it's at. But I think backstories, obviously backstories do play a huge chunk of your run as well. So that's why I think it was also important to do a tier list of both. But yeah, anywho. Yeah, so without further ado, if you want to reach out to me, the most informal way, if you want to reach out to me, like as someone to talk to or as a friend, Discord, but otherwise, if you want more business-related things, if you want to do anything related to this channel, please email me instead. But Discord is also not a bad way. I will still think about things there. It's just that, if you want me to officially play a game or something like that, you can give me suggestions through Discord. And you can find me in the World of Horror Discord server as well, along with many other servers if you're in the same server as me in those. But otherwise, yeah, for business-related purposes, usually use my channel email. And then I no longer have a Twitter/X, so yeah, I might actually have to do something there. I just might not touch it. Maybe that's not a bad idea to go completely away from Twitter X, but I'll think about it. Otherwise, tomorrow, again, don't know when I'm going to stream. Hopefully I'll plan it within, you know, a good reasonable amount of time and not just out of nowhere like this one. But I kind of let everyone know that I was going to do this stream, so hey. But yeah, if I forget anything, I forget anything. Otherwise, you know, I hope everyone stays safe. I know the world is a bit crazy at the moment, but we'll see. As someone living in the US of A, yeah, I gotta deal with things here. But yeah, without further ado, thank you for watching, everyone. If you want to support me, you know what to do. Otherwise, I won't take up more of your time. Thank you for watching. Bye! Bye! Jordan, end the stream. End the stream!